We are the podcast where together we explore the many options to aging on your terms. Today we are talking to Frances Reaves. She's an elder law attorney and an author and an advocate for our seniors and for those that are aging in the aging process. She's written a book, and the latest book is Boomers Booming, and we're going to be discussing that a little bit. But the name of her company is Parent Your Parents, and I want to spend some time talking about what that means. It's a great name. It's a great name for a company because it's very, very descriptive, and we're going to be talking about what that means. So, Frances, welcome to Aging Today.
Thank you, Mark. It's a delight to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're looking forward to our conversation today. I did have a chance to read your book, and it was very compelling. It was very thorough. And but before we get into that, I want to hear a little bit about your story. We always start our segments out with what's in your story. We're not so interested in what's in your wallet unless you have a plethora of greenbacks to share with all of our listening audience. We're more interested in your story.
Well, my story is mom and dad. That's sort of what got me here. What happened was mother had dementia. My brother and my brother lives in Atlanta, Georgia. I live in Miami, Florida, and mom and dad lived in Houston, Texas. So as a consequence, I would go probably once a month to visit. And my brother had children, etc. So he would go probably every other month, every 3 months. And we both noticed that there were issues with mom, but we kind of did the kid thing. Oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Then dad had his 90th birthday. It was a huge family reunion, and it was very apparent. Now, at this point, we had already gotten dad someone to come in 4 hours a day. But it was very apparent that that just wasn't going to cut it. At this age, dad is 90, mom was 84, and I still remember the day after the party, we're doing a brunch at their home, and mom says to me, I need to go home now. I'm really tired. And she was at home. So Matt and I, my brother and I, had to get moving, and it was a lesson in how badly seniors or elders are treated in the United States of America. If I hadn't been a lawyer, I fear for what would have happened to mom and dad. My father was a World War II vet. Mom was a Pan Am flight attendant. They had lived all over the world. She was a summa, or one of those cum laude graduates of American University. I mean, we're not talking about stupid people here. So the first thing we had to do is move them to either Miami or Atlanta. And of course, dad was like your parents, as we discussed earlier. I'm going to die in this house. And well, you can't, dad, because nobody lives here. And so he chose Atlanta.
And that makes it very difficult for a lot of families because we're such a transient society where in the earlier days, children and parents and grandparents all stayed in the same community. Now we live in multiple different states.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Nope.
and that makes it more challenging. How did you handle that traveling back and forth? You were in Florida and they were in Houston. I mean, that's got to be wearing and taxing on you as well.
Well, I have to say, if it was, I never noticed it because what was important were mom and dad. And
Yeah.
I give my parents full credit for raising us to be the type of children who were willing to put anything down to make sure they were okay. And I wish I could say, oh no, I'm such a wonderful person. They had nothing to do with it. But it has been proven to me time and time again. You know, it was, as I told my father when he would get upset because he felt as though I was taking away from work, I would tell him it was an honor. It was an honor to be able to do something that could help him out. Because what ended up happening is we got him into a place, mother could not be sustained there. After 62 years of marriage, they were going to have to be separated. They had long term care insurance. She was going to go into one place. He was going to go live with my brother and his wife. They had a basement apartment until he could decide what to do next. And after a year that it was after a year with my brother, he was the one who decided it was time for him to go to an assisted living, which he did. And just, because there were other people his age there. So,
Yeah.
And it was, I had to go back to Houston, excuse me, and clean out that home. My brother was in charge of Atlanta, trying to get mom put together. Mom had some fabulous jewelry. Of course, I wanted it all, but understood that we had, and so we had to do all that sort of thing. What is it we want? What is it that we're going to sell? And but it's not like you can call someone and say, "Hi, mom and dad need to move. Is there a senior moving place?" There isn't. Or, "Hi, mom and dad need help. How can we get some help?" "Oh, you'll have to qualify for Medicaid, or you'll have to qualify for this thing." I mean, qualification in and of itself is, I charge money for it. So, and the other thing that is so annoying from Medicare is that they send you this thing that says, "This is not a bill," but it looks just like a bill.
Yeah.
And Dad would look at it and he'd go, now, he calls me Franny. "Franny, what is it this means?" And I look through it. "Oh, Dad, you might be billed this much from your once you understand it, but it's not like they make it easy or intuitive. Why are you sending me something I don't have to pay?"
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sure someone with bigger brains thought of that.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think the whole process of aging is a very complex process, and if we don't prepare ourselves, and we're not prepared, usually as the children of mom and dad, the ones that are aging, we're not really that well prepared.
we're not.
So that's what I want us to discuss today is how can you help us to become more prepared? Because when we're proactive, we can begin to see some of the sequences that go along with the aging process. And one of the things that I think it's very difficult for us boomers to understand, we're in our 60s, 70s. I'm at the tail end of the boomer generation. I'm 67. So, the older ones are just approaching in their 80s. So, but they're still, they got most of it together.
We've got it all going on.
Yeah, we got it going on, but mom and dad don't. And
Yeah.
it's very difficult because, and that's why I love the name of your company. It's Parent Your Parents, and I think it's a switch that we need to turn on in our brains, that when we are brought into this world, we need a lot of assistance in order to survive. And with activities of daily living, all those things, as a child. And then it's really interesting. I think we all kind of know this intuitively, but we're not really prepared for it when we actually see mom and dad needing that same help. It's like reverting back to your 2-year-old days.
Well,
And it gets more progressive. It depends on how much cognitive issues that, mom and dad have.
mom and dad have. Well, I have to. It's funny because I've done it now with mom, and then I've also done it with a husband. Having the husband incontinent, having a person who you were married to and pooping in your bed and all this stuff, that is much worse than your parents. I'm just here to put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you you yourself, if you're the caregiver, have to decide, is this really what I want to do?
Yeah.
If it's
For
what you
your
want,
you're talking about your quality of life. Yeah.
exactly. And if
Yeah.
that's what you want to do, that's a-okay with me.
Yeah.
I am a lawyer who works full time, and it's not what I wanted to do. Now, with mom, it was interesting. I was visiting her, and it just shows you the difference.
Mm-hmm.
I was visiting with her, and she had come into my room and was laying on the bed, and we were just being mom and daughter. And then all of a sudden, and this I guess happens with dementia. Let me knock on wood here. Mom had to go to the bathroom, and then she goes, "Oh, I've got to go, I've got to go," and then she didn't make it. And
Mm-hmm.
so there it was, right, number two, all over, right in front of the bathroom. And it wasn't pretty. And Dad, of course, I'm guest, started. I said, "Dad, please, I'll take care of this." And Mom was like, "Oh, oh, oh." Then I say to Mom, I said, "Mom, how often did you have to do this for me?" And she goes, "You know what? You are right. I was constantly having to clean up after you." And it all went away. It all went away because you know what? That was my mother. She had to take me through that, whether she wanted to or not, and chose to do it by having me. And so parenting your parents is a very different modality, I guess, than
Mm-hmm.
than taking care of a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my case, that person was not the man I'd married.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that it's not all the same.
Well, like you were saying, is that you also have a job,
I do.
and you're an attorney, and you're an elder law attorney, and you have to go to work.
I have,
People are depending on you, and when you stay up all night long caring for your husband and all of his needs, and he's not sleeping well, or he's having to go to the bathroom, which is very typical among
yes.
seniors, 3 4 times a night.
Well, and you smell it,
Where's
or you
Yeah.
have to get up.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's none of that is fun. But on the other hand, um, the as sort of, why am I having to do this kind of dirty work? The worst part really is the stress. And
Hmm.
that's why when this happened with mom and dad was fine until the day he died, he was fine. But he was trying to take care of mom, and it was so apparent that that was going to kill him. I
Hmm.
mean, she was a handful. She was always a handful, much like
Hmm.
her eldest daughter with whom you're speaking. So,
The
so, you know, it,
fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, is what you're
it
saying.
certainly doesn't.
Yeah, what
No,
goes around comes around. Just remember that.
well, she was thrilled that finally I had to do something because I didn't have children. So,
Uh-huh.
whereas the other two did. And it was like, it's not fair, Frances, But I have to say that um, I'm so glad I had the parent experience and the husband experience because I I'm not speaking from someone who's read about it. I'm speaking from someone who's
Hmm.
lived it.
Yeah.
And so and I'm not saying I don't have more to learn because just today I went out with a woman in her 80s and she taught me something new, something I haven't written about or researched, but how hard it is. This is my next area. How hard it is to have your husband in hospice and be by yourself. I never
Yeah.
thought of it,
Yeah.
watching
Yeah.
him die. So, but that's a story for another day. But I mean, there's so much about this aging process that we as a culture, although I think the boomers
Yeah.
have started the research and the action, but these people who are aging, I mean, as you know, since you've read my book, first, don't don't think you're aging just because you have a number attached to it. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? I mean, my last article was, now that I am 70, I have to actually internalize it. I don't have to go out and show everybody I'm still young and all this stuff. No, internalize the fact that I'm 70 and use it to my benefit, which, for example, get rid of toxic people in your life. Some people have done that prior to me, but
Hmm.
I just got rid of toxic people.
Yeah,
Um,
I went through that same thing. The toxicity in people
yes,
and relationships.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. And when
And
you have it,
you,
when those are in your family, it's a little more difficult
it is.
to navigate that waters. But at the same time, there's ways that you can do that. Do you have any advice for, because it's easier to get rid of the toxic relationships that are outside of the family, but inside the family, how do you manage those?
Well, I have one.
Because there's no such thing as a perfect family.
No, 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 no. I have my sister quit speaking to me, I don't know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Hmm.
And it was something that was very unimportant to me, but something that was important to her. So I did my best. I apologized. I called. I think it was last year. Once again, I went through the whole rigmarole. Can I just come and you know let me do it in person? And the answer was nope. NOPE, nope. And you know what I did? I accepted it.
Yeah, yeah.
I accepted it. Okay. There's nothing. And if tomorrow she calls me and needs me, I'll talk to her.
Hmm.
I mean, none of this, I have whatever I did, it's something I wanted to mend it. She didn't. But you have to accept that you can't control
Yeah,
how that other person feels about you.
yeah,
Period.
yeah.
and
You,
and it's
you
hard. It's hard. You think, I mean, we all think, especially when you're the oldest child. I'm the oldest. I never thought it would last this long, but it has. And I think she's happy, and if she's happy, I'm happy for her. I'm
yeah.
very happy. I am on a mission.
I think it's important because families are families,
Hmm.
and um, there's no guarantee that just because we're part of a family that there's going to be harmony in that family. In fact, in reality says that if you've got individual personalities, just guarantee that there's not going to be
It's
harmony.
true.
And but I think the key is respecting each other's, you know,
Boundaries.
yes, respect the boundaries. It's okay, and agree to disagree, and to be able to say, I'm not going to agree with you on, the
Hmm.
way you're caring for mom, or I'm not going to agree with the way you're caring for dad, or how the money's being handled, and on and on and on it goes, all the
Hmm.
different ways and reasons.
Right.
We even politics gets into it, and it's like, oh my God, stop with all this, and just can't we just all get along? And the truth is, no, we
No,
can't.
we can't.
So accept it, build those boundaries, like you were saying. I love that. But you don't need to excommunicate family members from your life forever.
No,
There's going to be times when
I
you can hang
dedicated
in
the
there.
book to her as much as I did my brother.
Yeah.
Because she was raised in the same family. I
You
another
address that in your book, Boomers.
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
do not. I do
Okay.
not. No reason to. This
Yeah.
is. But I will say what I did address in the book was my mother and I. We were oil and water the entire time I was
Hmm.
growing up. She was 5'2", I was 5'10". You know, I had a personality she didn't know. I was much more like my father in a personality, which you'd think she would sort of love because she loved my dad, but she was the silent generation, and here I was, this woman who was like, I'm not going to have to learn to clean house. I don't want to learn how to cook. I am going to go to college. I am going to go to law school. I'm going to be, and It was what she'd wanted to do, but couldn't because she was that in generation. But
Hmm.
when mother became sick, when mother, I still remember the moment where I looked in the mirror and said, Frances Reaves, get over yourself. Your mother gave you life. And look at what a great life it's been.
Yeah.
So do what you have to do for your mom. And then I'm telling you, none of those people wanted to see me coming in, because if Charlotte, my mother, hadn't been treated right, they were going to hear it from me.
Sure.
And so it's never too late.
Yeah. And your role then changed as a daughter to become
Totally
a protector as well.
right.
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean,
And when
it's a you it sounds like you didn't have children, so you
mm-mm,
hadn't experienced being a parent protecting children, but now you are. You're the
yes,
parent to your parents,
I
and
was.
now you
No,
you're fulfilling all those things that you missed in your earlier years, girl.
that's right. That my siblings talked about that, yeah. And but if anyone out there has an issue with their parent that can be solved, the only reason I'm going to tell you to do your best to solve it for yourself
Hmm.
is because they're going to die, most likely going to die before you. And
Yeah.
honestly, the fact that mom died, I was with her. She died at 1 a.m. in the morning, so I wasn't with her when she died. But I was with her that day, and we were doing, she couldn't talk or anything because she'd had a stroke, but her little eyes were moving. And so when I used to go visit her, we used to sing songs together. The mom
Hmm.
playlist: Frank Sinatra, Ray Conniff, Mitch Miller,
Yeah.
and
Don't
uh,
forget
and
Tony Bennett. Don't
and
forget Tony.
Tony Bennett.
Yeah, he
I
was.
left my heart.
Yeah.
and and so I just sang and did things. And it's hard. It's hard when they're going to die. It is
Hmm.
hard. But something else that I thought was helpful was last rites. Mom had been a religious Anglican and Episcopalian. So my brother and I, and my dad, we all got together and had last rites for mom, which really calms you down, which kind of shocked me. I
Yeah.
mean, I wouldn't have
Oh,
known that.
how? How did that calm you down? Now, yeah, and you're saying that you're not so much of a spiritual or religious person as your
Right.
mom
In other
was.
words, I don't think anyone would think about getting last rites for me.
Yeah, yeah. But it did something for you. What
It did something.
explain what did that mean? How did
Oh,
it
I'm so
affect
happy
you?
you're asking me that, Mark. What happens is I, of course, was doing acts of kindness. Once we could tell she'd had the stroke, I was crying, and I was, putting lotion on her, and, trying to brush her hair and holding her hand. But I couldn't quit crying, and Dad was right there with me. But he's Mr. Stoic, World War II, Iwo Jima guy,
Hmm.
and it was interesting how just stoic he was. And so then when Matt said, well, let's bring Mark in, his priest, let's bring Mark in to do last rites. And I said, oh, Matt, okay, mom would really like that. And there's just something calming about, no matter how you feel about the Lord or Jehovah or whatever, take this woman into your arms, bop, 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 bop. And of course, the priest is also soothing to the
Hmm.
family. And because I knew how mother felt about it, it made me feel better for mother. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly
So
does.
I think that's what did it.
Yeah.
So um so if just because you're not a religious person doesn't mean that if your parents or your sister, brother, or whoever is having the issues in front of
Hmm.
you, if that's something that would benefit them, I promise you it's going to benefit you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So,
called respect.
mhm,
That's respect for our elders
mhm,
and honor your mother and father. And that's a way to do that. That's a very practical way. Even it may not be your belief system, it
right,
was their belief system.
right.
And
Well,
you gave them that gift.
yeah,
What a,
Dad
what,
couldn't have cared less.
yeah.
He, he died 4 months later. Matt couldn't believe he died when he did because it was in the middle. It was halftime during a football game. And he goes, I just can't believe Dad died during halftime.
Yeah.
It was a whole different messaging with my father. You know what
Sure.
I'm saying? And
Yeah.
and then it was like, oh no, he died not knowing the end. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Well, and he probably was he in battle in Iwo Jima?
he
Did he
was, yeah,
was it
no,
so he saw
oh
probably too
yeah,
much death at that
yeah.
point.
No,
Yeah.
he wasn't a Marine. He wasn't, the guy who was in there
Yeah,
putting up the
charging
fight.
up the
He'll
hill.
tell you, I was in the Navy. I was on the destroyer
Yeah.
sending the bombs in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But he saw not only death but a lot, over there. The
Hmm.
Japanese were, if you're a student of history, you know the Japanese were not easy warriors. They, if you lost a
Hmm.
battle and you were the commander, you had to commit suicide.
Yeah.
They call
Yeah.
it Harry Carey, which was a shock when I found out he was also a sports announcer for the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah.
I was I
Uh,
went to this restaurant in Chicago and they called it's Harry Carey's. I'm like, oh my God, that is so weird to name a
yeah.
restaurant after a suicide act by the Japanese.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally
so,
different thing. Totally
so you can
different.
tell I wasn't big in baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you have some of your clients that come to you
Mhm.
for the very first time, how do you approach them and getting them prepared? Because they don't even know what they don't know.
Exactly.
That's the biggest challenge to the whole aging process is we just don't know what we don't know.
You're absolutely right. And I wrote, since you read it, you know that I wrote Boomers Booming. The first half of the book is really about going out and having a good time and not letting age define you. And one of
Hmm.
one of my favorite people is Winston Churchill, who at the age of 66, when the median age for men dying in Great Britain was 62,
Hmm.
Winston Churchill came into power as prime minister during World War II had just started, and he took his country through World War II.
Hmm.
Then he was not elected. A lot of war presidents and prime ministers aren't reelected. It's a whole different thing. But
Yeah.
so he is now 71. So he's, still an MP. And at 77, he came back as prime minister just in time to have Elizabeth I ascend to the throne. And so first he takes us through war, then he takes us, not us, but us as
Right.
a nation,
Right.
through this young 22-year-old not only losing her father, but also having to take on becoming the queen. And uh, and he died at 81, where most men in his country were 62, and never once people would call him an alcoholic, but no one ever once said he was demented.
Yeah.
I mean, all you have to do, and remember Winston Churchill in his early days when he was Lord Chancellor of the war. It was during World War One. He lost a huge battle, Gallipoli. I mean, and it was the Australians and the New Zealanders who lost a lot of the people in this battle. And I mean, he had to resign in disgrace. So
Hmm.
from that, he got wise, right? And so I
Sure.
tell people, stop thinking you have quit aging. I mean, that you have quit living. I mean,
Yeah.
I choose to continue working, but there are people who continue to travel, who are doing nonprofit work, who are
Hmm.
using their wisdom and experience and and the intellectual abilities that they have to move forward.
Yeah. So
So
Boomers Booming is a book about living your best life possible after the age of 65. In other words, just
exactly.
because you turned 65 does not mean that you are to take your life and put it on the shelf and give up.
No,
And
in fact,
which,
what it means your insurance is cheaper.
yeah, that's right. You get Medicare,
Yeah, you get Medicare and you can then have a
Social
supplemental plan.
Security. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then
on it
you
goes.
can get Social Security. I mean, I'm sorry. What's wrong with that? A little extra money. You
Yeah,
don't have to pay insurance.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, so I mean, I think that's how we should look at it. And I think whatever you choose is what's okay. In other words, not everyone is going to choose to travel the world or might
Hmm.
not have the resources for it. I had a woman who had been my manicurist for a very long time, and she was just so happy to retire to read all the books she'd never read.
Yeah.
Okay, what's
Well,
wrong
and
with
a lot of people they take on they become artists
yes?
in their 60s. You know, they
Steve Martin.
yeah, yeah. And there was several people that I've known that we've cared for over the years, and it wasn't until they reached their 70s and their 80s that they began picking up a paintbrush and started painting it. Oh my goodness. W- Incredible
Right.
sceneries and things that they put on the canvas that I can't even imagine how, it was lying dormant in them. I hoping that I got some of that in me, but I
Yeah.
doubt it.
Well, what about President Bush? President Bush too.
Yeah,
You know, he now does all those wounded warriors. He
yeah,
does the wounded warrior portraits. And
yeah,
I think some of that is that 10-year war in Afghanistan. But
yeah.
I mean, no one else did anything for the Vietnam vets like he's done for the wounded warriors when it comes to trying to portray his feeling, because that boy never saw war. Um, so, but what you have to do to live a good life is plan for it. And
Hmm.
that's about 4 pieces of paper. Well, 4 documents. The first one is a power of attorney. The second one is a healthcare proxy. The third one is a will. The fourth one is a trust. Now, a will is always incorporated into a trust. And people seem to think that because they don't have a lot of money, they don't need a trust. So I'm going to start with why you need a power of attorney.
Okay.
A power of attorney gives to somebody you trust all your powers should something happen to you. And this doesn't necessarily mean death. You can be in a car accident and
Hmm.
out for 2 or 3 weeks. Or you know what I'm saying? Someone's
Yeah.
got to pay those bills, someone's got to tell the bank what happened, and that's the power of attorney. And I almost always suggest two for a couple of reasons. First of all, you sort of have a check. In other words, the first power of attorney can't just take it all because it's a dangerous instrument. Once you sign it, that power of attorney can go almost anywhere and take out your money. Now, in Florida, we have what's called durable power of attorney, which means all the person has to do is sign it, and their agent can go do all the stuff they've signed. In Missouri is a good example. Or New Mexico. In Missouri and New Mexico, they have what's called a durable, but they also have a springing power of attorney, which means that one or two doctors have to say you're incapacitated prior to a power of attorney being able to take something on.
Yeah.
Now, the healthcare proxy, that is, of course, when you're in the hospital, same car accident, right? And
Hmm.
say you have diabetes, or I, I'm pretty lucky. I'm not very sick, so I don't know a lot of what you could have. But your healthcare uh, proxy allows you to go to that hospital and say, listen, this person is also diabetic, so they're going to need this, da, da, da. Here is the list of their medication, and unless you give me a good reason not to do it, he has to be on there. These medications must be given.
Hmm.
Um, the will, now, a will, every state has different rules, but here's one thing about wills: it will go through probate. And probate means you're going to go in front of a judge, you're going to hand the will into probate court. And then, after paying an attorney for every statute's different, but it can run depending on how much money it is. The more money you have, the higher the probate costs. And even though they're the same, it makes no sense. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's the exact same actions. It's just more money. So, and then the judge finally says, okay, this is what he wanted. And so the will is done. And then a trust, what's good about a trust is that it bypasses probate. But a trust is more expensive up front. So I also talk about there are many financial instruments that you can use between trusts and wills to sort of um, keep things out of probate. So that is what you have to do before you go out and have a good time. And I'm just going to give you several examples of what has happened. One of my favorites is Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Hepburn did everything she was supposed to do. She had a little trust. She had 2 sons. She had a trust. And then she had the pour over will. And in the trust and pour over will, she said to the boys, you all split my movie memorabilia 50-50 any way you want. That took 25 years.
Oh,
25 years. Because Audrey Hepburn movie memorabilia, do you know how much that's worth?
oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Can only imagine.
Yes. Another,
Priceless.
exactly. Another big favorite, Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin knew she was going to die. She had pancreatic cancer. The doctors had told her, she knew, she knew, she knew. She had 4 sons. She dies. She doesn't have a will. Then all of a sudden, about a week later, each son found a will. And then the IRS came calling and said, no, 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 no. She owes us $80 million in back taxes.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah. So until the IRS was done, nothing else. And remember, they also are going to value her music going forward. I mean,
Hmm.
respect, RESPECT. I can't even imagine how much that one song is worth. And you know, and the IRS takes their tax up front.
Yeah,
So it took 5 years before the boys got anything.
yeah, yeah.
Anything. So I'm just saying, that's why you have to plan. I mean, how much money was spent on lawyers between Audrey Hepburn's sons, valuing every piece, just with you had to have it with Aretha Franklin. You had to have that IRS lawyer there, a lawyer for each of the sons, and then of course the judge appointed the personal representative, and he was paid a handsome salary. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars.
Where did they fall? I mean, where did the attorneys not do a good job of protecting,
Well,
those individuals? Were they just in over their skis? They didn't know what they didn't know until it got into the court system. But you would
well,
think that they would be elder law attorneys. You would think that they would know these things,
well,
and
I
that's
can
why
tell
you
you.
hire.
Here's the issue. Now, in Aretha Franklin's case,
Uh huh.
she's like my husband. He's not going to die. Just ask him. He wasn't going to get Alzheimer's. Just ask him. I mean, it was
Hmm.
in his family. 4 of his uncles had it. He would not get long term care. No, he wasn't going to get it. And nor is he going to die. He didn't have a will. I finally put together a will and had him sign it. And I put together the power of attorney and the healthcare proxy, put myself there and had him sign it. I mean, and that's exactly who Aretha Franklin was. Now, what could have happened with Audrey Hepburn, but I don't know. What could have happened with Audrey Hepburn is the attorney said, well, Ms. Hepburn, this is going to cost a lot. Oh, no, 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 no. The boys get along so well. I just don't, that's not going to happen. I mean, sometimes you can't convince them otherwise.
Yeah.
Now, here is, without a doubt, my favorite. And this was a lawyer who did his own trust. But guess what? He was a real estate lawyer and he owned the Miami Dolphins. His name is Joe Robbie.
Hmm.
So Joe Robbie owned the Miami Dolphins and he owned the stadium, called it Joe Robbie Stadium. And he died. He and his wife had 11 children. And when he died, there were 9 left. And he he put together his own trust, which, by the way, I did, and now I have to redo it because I forgot about a special needs trust for my husband in case I predecease him. So just saying, we
Yeah.
lawyers shouldn't be doing our own trusts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he put together his own trust, and in it, he had 3 of his kids as the trustees, right? So 3 of his kids were the trustees, and then he had 1 kid who worked for the Dolphins. So the 3 trustee kids went in and fired their brother. Mom got really angry. I mean, like, why are you firing him? There's no reason to fire him. And they were like, well, Mom, Dad didn't appoint you as a trustee. He appointed us, and we're doing what's best for everybody. Well, in this trust, Joe Robbie had put what we call an inter vivos, and a trust that's alive to support his wife. Am I getting too technical? Are you trying not to yawn?
Yeah, no, no, it's good. It's a great story because I think, the majority of us aren't of that kind of wealth, but it's interesting to hear the story. And after you get done with telling the story, I want you to go a little bit into where maybe the rest of us live, where, mom and dad got a little estate and, it's not that big. Okay. But anyhow,
Yeah.
keep going because it's a great
Well,
story.
well, here's what Mom did. She said, all right, I'm going to claim my dowager share. In other words, he had left her a trust, but not money. And he was worth a whole lot of money and had not left her a third. He had left her the Inter Vivos Trust, which was going to be fine. I mean, she was going to live just fine. But what she said is, all right, kids, I'm going to go and claim my 1/3 of my estate because I'm his wife. It's called elective share, and you can elect to take a third of whatever your spouse has if they haven't left that to you. If they've already left it to you, what do
Hmm.
you care?
Hmm.
And they said, oh, no, Mom, you can't do that because we can't afford the taxes. They fought her all because they'd have to sell to give her a third of his estate. They fought her all the way to the Florida Supreme Court, and she won. The elective share, you can't touch it. And they had to sell the Miami Dolphins. Those 3 trustees got 1/9 of what their father had. The other 6 got their 1/9 of what their father had and 1/6 of what their mother had. And to this day, they don't talk.
Yeah.
So be careful when you're doing these trusts.
Money does funny things to people.
I know. And if you're the trustee, so you want to talk a little bit about folks like you and me.
Yeah, well, at least me.
No.
So,
I'm
so
right there with you.
and one of the things I think I remember reading in your book, it was about you made the statement Medicaid is not just for the poor.
It's not.
And so the question is, how can Medicaid work for the middle incomers?
Yes,
And which is the majority of us.
exactly.
And, in the state of Oregon, at least for Medicaid, in order to apply for Medicaid, you have to virtually have nothing. I mean,
Correct.
less than $2,000. And you can own your own car and you can own your own home, but you got to have income coming in. But there's also what's called an income cap trust that allows you to protect yourself. But I don't know if you have that in
We
Florida.
call it a qualified income trust.
Okay. So explain for the rest of us
Yes.
out there how then, because just and my listening audience knows this about me. I own an agency for in-home care and I own a hospice. Hospice is fine because Medicare covers the total cost of that.
Right.
However, in-home care comes out of your own pocket.
Yeah.
And in the state of Oregon, because of all the government regulations and all the things that Oregon has going for it, people don't realize that I don't pay taxes. I pass those taxes on to the consumer as a business owner. People don't understand that yet. So my cost to do in-home care is $47.50 an hour. So if you need 24-hour care, that's over $36,000 a month
Right.
for in-home care. Who can afford? I can't even afford my own services. I'm just being transparent and honest here because we as a society got to figure this out. And I don't know the solution other than maybe it's a mixture of government intervention, which it just makes my skin crawl. But private pay can't. There's just nobody can afford it.
Well, you're absolutely right.
Then Medicaid has to come in somehow, but it's not afford. I couldn't qualify for Medicaid because I make too much money. So now what?
Well, Medicaid planning is my specialty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a question of trusts, spend downs, personal care contracts, and we put it all together. I'm just going to use my husband, for example, because he's in Medicaid now. So his Social Security, which is all he had, his Social Security was more than the income in Florida. So I had to put together that qualified income trust. And every month I have to put $400 into that qualified income trust. And since you read my book, you know my husband left me in debt and had spent all his money. So I have to put $400 into that qualified income trust. And when he dies, all that money goes to Medicaid to pay for what they did.
For what they used, yeah.
Yeah, for what they used. Now, can you take the time to actually administer that trust and see if there's anything left for you? You can, but I don't, I've cut it pretty close to the bone, so I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
But when you have, for instance, in Florida, the house is exempt, but only up to $670,000. So if you have a $3 million home, you still have an asset.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, every state is different.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
But the way we work it is through a personal care contract, for instance. The personal care contracts I've done are usually for children taking care of their parents. And so we actuarially, there's all these actuarial tables that say, okay, dad is 85. Chances are he'll live till 90. So we'll do this on a 5-year deal. And then this is what it's going to cost for us to take care of dad. Now, taking care of dad does not mean he has to live in your home. What it does mean is that you have to pay his bills, that if he's in a Medicaid facility, you have to hire that nurse that's going to take care of him. Bop, 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 the extra food, that, there's a formula to it. And that, so if you think about, let's say, $50,000 a year for 5 years, well, you can take $250,000 of it away in a personal care contract. So you see what I'm saying? So if the children were going to inherit the money, they're going to get it this way. There are some annuities that work. I personally don't use annuities. We've had a couple go bad, so I'm not an annuity girl. The other thing you can do is buy a new car. That's part of transporting you back and forth to all your doctor's appointments. You can, if they're going to live in the house, you can get that portion of the house redone. So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, walk-in showers,
yeah,
grab bars and all the things.
and not just grab bars, but I don't know. Do you need some painting redone there? And I mean, what about a couple pieces of artwork? Just because mom always liked a little bit of art in her room. You see what I'm saying? In other words, that's actually, for me, it's kind of fun. Like, okay, what can we do to qualify you for Medicaid? So it's not as bad as it looks. And it's all on the up and up. I mean, you have to use that money to do what you say you're going to do.
Sure. And that's a way to spend down. However, in the end, after mom and dad die, the state's going to come back and want it back.
No.
Correct?
No, why would they? They can't.
Well,
with the personal care contract, you were doing what you said you were doing.
Privately.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, no, I'm referring to.
You can also do IOUs.
Yeah.
There's this whole IOU thing you can do where you lend the money to the kids and then the kids have to pay you back at a reasonable rate. But if you die, right after, Medicaid doesn't get that money. It's all, in other words, this is always, the only way Medicaid gets the money is if you're going in over the income cap.
Yeah, they're going to get that back. That's what I was referring to.
What I've done with Tom, I will get none of that money.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, his brothers don't believe. They think I'm doing something,
shady under the table there. Yeah.
Well, they can listen.
They can listen to this show, and you stated it publicly now, so that you're not going to incriminate yourself. Yeah,
one of those brothers is totally on the toxic list. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I got another question for you, and we're running up towards the end of our time here together, but I wanted to ask you in particular, when I was reading through your book, and the situation that I'm in myself, where I'm living with my mom and was living with my dad, but he's passed and now living with mom. And I began to think about, our wishes, and we want our best life possible, whatever that means for each individual.
That's correct.
And the one thing that I keep going back to is how important family is. And I know that that's a very difficult thing because a lot of families are fractured, and a lot of families a lot of people don't have family. I mean, I'm surprised at even my mom and dad's generation how many people chose not to marry and they don't have children.
Hmm?
And that's even being is more prevalent today with our younger generation. They've chosen not to marry.
Hmm.
So the family dynamic is important, but I guess sometimes it comes down to, okay, how do you define family? And family can be, embracing personal friends. It can be all kinds of things. But the bottom line is you've got to make sure don't isolate yourself to the point where you don't have any family, whatever that definition
Means to you.
means. Yeah, because it's a very lonely place.
I
And
bet
I've
you.
seen it over and over and over again when you are 80, 90, whatever, and you're dying, actively dying.
Hmm.
You don't want to be in that place. It's a lonely place to be.
But chances are I will be.
Hmm.
I have no children. My husband is 15 years my senior and has Alzheimer's. So even if he were alive when this happened to me, it wouldn't matter. So, um,
But you're taking steps. I mean, you have personal friends.
I
I
certainly
mean,
have personal friends, but I'm going to tell you what I really have:
okay.
long-term care insurance.
Hmm.
Because long-term care insurance, whether I decide to go into an assisted living facility and paying $6,000 or $7,000 a month, or have in-home care at my home, it's going to reduce my cost substantially, 2/3, if not 3/4.
Yeah.
And I, I, it's so funny. I tell everyone, people say, oh my gosh, long-term care is so expensive now. They're correct. It is. I was smart enough to get into it about 15 years ago. But here's the bottom line. If you're paying $10,000 a year for long-term care, let's just say you're paying $10,000 a year.
Hmm.
You said it yourself. A month with tax of in-home care is $46,000. But if you have long-term care helping you pay that, all of a sudden it becomes a much easier amount to
Hmm.
swallow that maybe you have in savings. Or maybe you're going to have to go into an assisted living facility, but they're going to pay for most of that.
Yeah.
So I call long-term care a necessary evil because, believe it or not, mom and dad had long-term care and they were treated so badly by the long-term care people
Hmm.
that it's this long story about how I finally got their attention through LinkedIn, and they gave me $15,000 because they had miscounted mom. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
15,000.
Yeah.
And that was my first parry. I thought they'd come down, which meant I didn't ask for enough.
Hmm.
So I'm just saying, if you are alone, don't wish that you die before you go into a Medicaid facility, because chances are that's not going to happen. We're all living longer.
Yeah.
And a woman I just ran into the other day, she's so upset with her brother because of the way she doesn't like where her mother is, even though the brother is paying for it. And I looked at her and I said, he's the one with the money. And if he's got your mom in a place where I understand you don't like it, but your mother is being taken care of, and I don't say this very often. I told her, I said, remember, you're going to be in that position yourself. So you
Hmm.
might want to make sure your brother loves you too.
Yeah. Amen to that. Amen to
You
that.
know,
You
I
better
mean,
mend all your relationships because you
exactly.
don't want to go into that last chapter of your life.
Well, and listen, my brother, when all this happened with my husband, and oh my gosh, I didn't know what to do or where to go. I could call my brother and his wife, and if I needed $300, for a short-term loan, it was in my bank account that afternoon. And why is
Hmm.
that? Because I pay him back. That's but B, um, he he understands. Sometimes we fall short, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and the good news is we're past that, but when 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 your life explodes in front of you, and it will, I mean, that
Hmm.
doesn't mean you're down and out for the count. You've already had it explode in front of you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this podcast.
That's right. That's right. Hey, let's conclude with this. Let's go
Okay.
back to your book, um, Boomers Booming.
Yeah. How to
What
thrive
would?
after 65.
Yep. What's your favorite chapter? Out of all the chapters, I think there's like over 20, isn't there?
I think
There's
there's
19,
18.
19, 19 chapters. What was your favorite chapter that you enjoyed reading the most that maybe for whatever reasons?
I think I have two. One is chapter 7, which is, as you know, all my chapters are titled from verses from songs.
Yes, I was going to mention that to the listeners today because some of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
You,
So
those are the
this
names
one
of the chapters.
This one is clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. And that's from Happy by
Hmm.
Pharrell Williams. And I just talk about how lucky we are and how let's pinch ourselves. I mean, I woke up this morning and I went out to do my walk and I got to watch the sunrise. And yet, here in Miami, a very well-known um, congressman died just this weekend at the age of 70. He doesn't get to see that sunrise ever
Yeah,
again. I
yeah.
also had a good friend here in Miami die of a cancer at 56. 56. And we're complaining at 70. Hey, 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 hey.
Hmm.
And then I think my other favorite chapter is chapter 1 because I mean, that's one where I talk about, you can't let a number define you. You can't let someone tell you you're over the hill. Every one of us is Winston Churchill. We just have to find what we want to do and go
Yeah,
do it. I
yeah.
didn't talk about the guy who took himself back to medical school at the age of 62. I mean, there's so many people out there. And to me, that is, and of course, I love all the photos of my family. I love looking at mom and dad getting married again.
Yeah.
I was born 9 months and 4 days after they got married.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
good thing
What
it
does
was
that say?
nine
What does
months.
that say? They had a great honeymoon.
Exactly. I was either conceived in New Orleans or before.
Yeah, yeah. One of the two. So chapter 1 is what good is sitting alone in your room? What
That's
what
right.
song is that after?
That is from Cabaret. What good is sitting alone in your room? Come
Mhm.
hear the music play. I can't get up that high.
Nicely done. You got a good voice there.
And
You hit those
life
tunes.
is a cabaret, old chum. Come to the cabaret.
All right. Well, and then maybe this is a great place for us to end our conversation. And I just want to say thank you, Frances, for being on Aging today. I
Thank you.
encourage our listeners to pick up your book, Boomers Booming.
You can get
There's a
it on
copy of
my
it.
website, parentingyourparents.com,
Yep.
or good old Amazon.
Yeah, and how to thrive after 65. And
Hmm.
and you know the thing is that I used to look at my life in 10-year increments.
Hmm.
You can yeah, and that's true. There was chapters, those are chapter breaks. But I think that if I would look back on my years, I saw 30-year
That's what I
increments.
discuss. It is
Yeah,
2 years.
30, the first 30, then the next 60, and then I'm looking at the last 30 of my life. I'm 67.
Hmm.
So I'm looking forward to exactly what your book says is I want to learn, I want to live life larger than I can even ever imagine in the last 30 years, and I'm going to live it well. I truly am. And that's my goal. I'm just going to have fun.
Right.
And I'm still working like you, and I enjoy working. I
I do
really
too.
do.
I do too.
So, but I want to work less now that I own my own companies, but I want to work when I want to work and surround myself with more intelligent people than myself and better looking. So that's all and then just keep living life.
We always want the smarter ones around us.
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
exactly who I look for.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. Well, it was a delight, Frances, having you on. I
Mark, it was so much
appreciate
fun.
our conversation, and do pick up her book, Boomers Booming, and enjoy that read because I think
And
it's
the
inspiring.
ride.
And the what? The
The
ride?
ride. Because once you read it, you're going to start taking that ride.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Well, this is Mark Turnbull, your host, and I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Aging Today. Remember this, we're all in the process of aging, and as we age, we really are better together. So stay young at heart.
Stay young.